Welcome to part 3 of our solar series. Don't worry if you miss the first 2 parts. They do not need to be watched in order, but I do recommend that you go back and check them out because there is some great information in both of those episodes. Today, though, we are talking all about financials. Personally, I believe that solar can be a great investment for homeowners who have the ability to put solar on their home. Now, if you live in the US, there's even an opportunity to create an infinite rate of return when you put solar on your home. I know it sounds too good to be true, but stick with me until the end and I will share how that is possible. The average rate of return of the S&P 500 from 1921 to 2020 is about 10%. That means that it would take 10 years before you make your money back. Now keep in mind, there is no guarantee that your money will be there in 10 years either, because after 10 years, you could be at the low end of what that average was. We could also look at a shorter time frame. If we look at 2001 to 2020, so over 20 years, the average rate of return is less than 8%, which means that it would take 13 years to get your money back. Once again, not guaranteed at 13 years if you're even going to have any money in there, if it's going to be cut in half because you're at a significant drop. Now, if we look at solar and how the numbers work, it can actually provide a higher rate of return year after year, with the only risk of it going down being caused by your panels being damaged, which should be covered by your insurance, or electricity rates going down, which rarely happens. Electricity rates have generally experienced an upward trajectory over the past century, primarily driven by inflation, increasing energy demand, and the need for infrastructure investments. Depending on where you live in the US, if you look at the rates alone, it may only look like the increase has been about 3% per year over the last 20 years. But what the electricity companies do is add additional fees in there and give them names like distribution charges or transmission charges or system benefit charges or taxes and regulatory fees or renewable portfolio standards or clean energy standards or demand charges, right? The names and the list goes on and on. And in addition to this, most electricity companies will charge you a higher rate if you use more electricity, which is crazy when you think about it. Can you think of any other service that charges you more when you are a more loyal customer? Imagine you went to the gas station and it cost you $1.50 for the first 100 kilometers that you drove. And then after 100 kilometers, you had to pay $2 per liter. And then after 200 kilometers, you had to pay $2.50 per liter. And it just kept rising. That's how electricity companies work. And that just blows my mind. Let's get into how solar energy can be a great investment for homeowners. On a very basic level, solar energy systems can help homeowners save money in the long run by generating their own electricity and reducing their reliance on utility companies. So this is especially true when you live somewhere with solar incentives. If the government is giving you money to install solar panels on your home, I would take some time to look into it if I were you. At the time of this recording, there is a 30% federal tax incentive for homeowners in the US to install solar panels on their home. It can even include things like new roof if you need a new roof before you put the solar panels on. So like I said, might be something you want to look into. Let's get back to the numbers though. I've run numbers for a lot of houses in the US, and it's one of the only investments that I know that will bring you an increased ROI each year with little downside risk, as I've already mentioned. Assuming you're connected to the grid and you're looking to add solar to your home, here's a simple way to understand it. Once you're all connected up, your solar panels will feed into the grid and will not power your home directly. That's the most common question I get. This is actually a good thing, as batteries are very expensive, so you can look at the grid as your battery. You need to take that electricity that you're producing and store it somewhere. And since you don't have a battery in your home, you just send that back to the grid and it gets used where it needs to be used. The second part is you will then be billed or credited for the difference each month. Some months you may produce more than you use, and other months you may produce less than you use, but ultimately we're looking to zero things out over the year. In some areas, there will be a fixed fee that you can't necessarily get rid of. I mentioned all those fees and charges. So you can't get credited for those, but you can consider this a cost to use the grid as your battery, as it's still way more cost effective compared to buying batteries at your home, because the amount of batteries that you need will just blow the budget out of the water. If you've been paying attention to your bills over the years, you have likely noticed that your electricity costs continue to rise year after year. As a reminder, in many places, you also get charged more if you use too much. That means that once you have solar panels on your home, you will save more and more every year. Every time the rate goes up, you actually save more money, which means that your return on investment jumps up. Another way to look at this is that you're not necessarily saving money, you are actually making money. The higher the rates go after you have solar panels, the more money you are making. The best thing about this is that it's guaranteed as long as your panels are working. It's like having a rental unit on your roof with tenants who never move out, always pay their rent on time, and never party. How does that sound? If you have rental units and you pay for electricity for units, putting solar panels on might make sense for you. Now here's an example of a project that I ran numbers on for Boston, and I chose this because it's not a great place for solar if you consider California or Florida or somewhere where they have lots of sun all year round, but the numbers still looked great. This house had quite a few trees around it and wasn't necessarily positioned the best, but the payback period was still only 8 years. Plus, they would save or make, right, depending on how you want to look at this, an additional almost $62,000 over the next 12 years beyond that 8-year period. So that's over 20 years. And if you take this out all the way to 30 years, you can add another $80,000 to how much this person could save or make. I'll stop saying that after this. But that means that beyond their payback over 30 years, they're going to potentially make $142,000. And that's all assuming a 4% increase in utility costs per year. So anything beyond that, if it goes up by more than that, just makes the numbers even better. When I look at the ROI in this table, I feel the need to share this with people. That's why I'm doing this episode. Does it work on every house? No, but there's no cost for you to find out if your house qualifies. That's a great thing about reaching out to a solar company, is that they will be able to do the numbers for you and it's not going to cost you a penny. Additionally, if you're concerned about the upfront cost of solar, there is great financing options in the US, and you can get solar panels on your home for no money down and reduce your monthly costs. Here's how it works. Let's say your average monthly electricity bill is $300. And let's say financing your solar panels over the next 20 years is going to cost you $250 a month. That means that you're going to save $50 per month right off the bat. That $50 per month in savings would increase year after year if we assume utility costs are increased by 4% per year. You can see that in the table. You can see the increase, so the savings per month, it goes from 50 to 62 to 74 to 87 to 100 and so forth. You can see that on the screen. Over 20 years, you will have saved over $47,000, and at this point, your system is now paid for. And if we continue to calculate this for another 10 years, you save, or I should say make, an additional $95,000. Now, you may be thinking, I don't want to finance a system though, but let me ask you this. What is your return on investment over 30 years if you invest $0 and end up with $142,000? It's infinite. This is what I was referring to at the beginning of the episode. You have an infinite rate of return. You put $0 down, didn't have to do anything other than sign the papers and go through everything and make sure that everything, that the solar panels got installed and you worked with your contractor and so forth. But once it's up and running, it's going, you make, in this example, $142,000 over 30 years for doing practically nothing, and you didn't put any money down. Pretty good deal if you ask me. This is why I am so excited. There is so much good that can come from this for homeowners and their families, especially at a time with the rising interest rates and the rising costs of living. We're looking at trying to get those costs down. If you live in the US and you're interested in figuring out whether or not your home qualifies, simply head to theconsciousbuilder.com/solar and fill out the form there, and I will get back to you. Until next time, I'm Casey Gray, and remember to live consciously.